Recorded Books presents The Dope, The Real History of the Mexican Drug Trade by Benjamin T. Smith, narrated by John Curless. Prologue. The Lookout. Curless never wanted to be in the narcotics business, but he had little choice. The youngest of 11 children, he was born in Caracuaro in 1989, once the base for Mexico's 19th century independence army, now the small nondescript village in the Michoacan hotlands boasted few opportunities. Most villagers produced agricultural goods for the local market, or, if they could afford to pay for passage, migrated north to find work. It was one of the poorest townships in one of Mexico's poorest states. 4 in every 5 families lived in poverty. Curless's family was one of them. We didn't have a TV or a car or anything. We just had a house with a dirt floor, and that was only because my father left to be with his other woman. Curless's hometown, however, did have one advantage. It lay on a beautiful winding road that ran up from Mexico's west coast to the center of the country, and from there to the United States. By the mid-1990s, the road was a major drug highway. Curless learned the business young. 5 of his brothers drove narcotics from the coast to the state capital of Morelia. So did 3 of his brothers-in-law, and all his cousins. They were all involved. I didn't know anyone who wasn't. But no one said anything. It was just a job. Even his mother was drawn in. She stored guns and narcotics in one of the caves overlooking the small ranch on which they all lived. And when Curless was 7 years old, he also started to work as a halcón, or lookout, for the stash. In his decade in the drug business, Curless demonstrated a singular lack of ambition. As his brothers moved up the hierarchy from transporters to gunmen to local chiefs, they often mocked their shy, diminutive sibling. But Curless didn't mind. He liked being a lookout. The job allowed him to wander the stunning, rolling landscape above his ranch. It allowed him to look after his aging mother. He also showed a complete lack of interest in experimenting with any of the drugs. He never opened the packages, never looked inside, and certainly never used them. They were for the gringos. He did, however, notice that the mercancía, the merchandise, changed. At first, in the mid-1990s, it was cocaine. When I first started, my brothers used to bring in loads of perico, parakeet, but also the slang term for cocaine. It was wrapped tightly in cellophane packets with names and numbers on the side. No one ever told me what they meant, and I never asked. Then, by the end of the decade, his brothers also brought in weed. Marijuana was Curless's least favourite narcotic. I had to carry it up to the hill, to the cave in these massive sacks. It was so heavy, and it stank. Then, at the turn of the century, there was another change. It was all yellow, ice, or methamphetamine, and chiva, goat or heroin. They said it all came from down the mountains, around Zihuatanejo and Petatlan. He also observed the changes in the trade's local protection rackets. At first, it was the state cops who were in charge. When Curless was just a child, they would come up to the ranch, sling a few packages of cocaine into a squad car, and then drive back to the state capital. A local politician even came once. He wanted to thank my brothers for their work. But by the turn of the century, it was traffickers themselves. When the Zetas came, they demanded that we work for them now. If you didn't, they just killed you, just like that.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?